Good morning. Got a couple ideas rolling around in my head. I've been thinking a lot about discipline being self-expression because it's the concrete bridge that others can meet us on. You know, you need a solid foundation to be able to stand upon. Well, the spirit is abstract, the spirit is you. And since it's abstract and chaotic and needs formation for people to understand it, what we do is we kind of alchemize? I think that's a word. We convert it from the abstract to the concrete so that other people can understand us and we can understand ourselves. So examples of that is when people say, keep a journal, keep a diary. You got all these ideas rolling around up in your head, and then you don't know what to do with them. There's no formation to them. They're chaotic, and you can feel that because it's unorganized and there's no order to it. And so a lot of people keep a journal because the act of speaking something into words or writing something down into the paper through words, it formalizes it because it forces chronological order. If you can express it in one piece of paper on one page, then you know the idea at least enough to sacrifice all the nonsense words and express it through the words that you think are important, right? Those are value propositions. And so it forces some form to it, it forces some order. That's why poetry works, because it holds a lot inside of a little. You know, you can write an entire book about something, or you can say a 4-line poem, and the 4-line poem hits harder because the words are so selective. They have to be. And we can go into what makes a poem better and what doesn't, but that's not the point. The point is that when you concretize something, other people can understand it, because the world speaks in form. It doesn't speak in chaos. We are chaotic because we are spirit. But how am I going to understand you? Like, if I'm chaotic, how am I going to understand you if you're chaotic? We have no road that has been paved, that is concrete, on which we can meet on. There's no bridge between us. And so that's what communication is, right? We have body language, we have words, we have actions. That's why I say actions speak louder than words. What's more concrete than physically doing something? Nothing, because we live in a physical world, right? So discipline then are limits that we give ourselves so that we can speak to the world. It's like, if you don't want to be disciplined, that's fine. It just means that nobody's going to understand you, and you probably won't understand yourself, because it's silly to think that you know yourself. It's like, you don't know yourself, you do things and you have no idea why. And so when you give yourself boundaries to bump up against, it forces you to come out, right? It forces you to be more creative. And this is the main thing that I've been thinking about. These are new thoughts, but creativity versus productivity. So productivity is like, I will make more of less. It's a multiplier. Creativity is I will make more from less. So the example is, if you have 3 lines like this, productivity actually, 3 lines, productivity multiplies it into 5 lines. So you make more from 3. Now you have 5. You had 3, now you have 5. That's productivity. Creativity, you start with the 3 lines, and then you make a triangle. I can't make a So you didn't have more lines, you just did something new with them, and triangle is formed, and so, that's creative. You did more with less. So personality comes out when you do that, because the type of thing that you'll create from less shows your uniqueness, right? And this is really interesting because if you look at the geniuses of the past, like Nikola Tesla, Albert Einstein, Leonardo da Vinci, Beethoven, all these guys, they were unique, right? They were crazy smart, don't get me wrong, but they were extremely unique and they were novel and all of their stuff was new. You know, they carved their own path. And I was interested in like what makes a genius. And so I looked up the word genius, try to figure it out. My original hypothesis was that you could learn yourself into being a genius. And I still think that's true because when I looked up what genius used to mean back in the day, that the genius was not the person, the genius was what they called a spirit guide. So everybody had a genius, and it was being in contact with their genius or their spirit guide. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, what does that mean then? Well, people like Nikola Tesla, Beethoven, Albert Einstein, and Leonardo da Vinci, you'll see that they claim it just came to them, or it just popped up in my head, or I saw it in a dream and I had to write it down. Beethoven specifically, I saw some of his stuff, his music in a dream. He'd wake up from the dream and go and write it down, and that would become his music. Carl Jung, oh my gosh, dude. If you've never read Carl Jung's stuff, you have to go read it. Read the Red Book, or Dreams, Reflections, and Visions. Anyway, so Carl Jung had this thing where he called it active imagination. And he'd have dreams too. He'd have a dream and he'd learn from his dream and he'd go follow the dream on a literal level, like his dream would tell him what to do. Well, he started doing this thing called active imagination, which is basically dreaming during the day. And it's insane, almost like literally, because the Red Book, I have it, is filled with him talking to characters that give him wisdom. But it's all in his head. And so I've actually tried doing this because I was curious about it. And so the idea is like you have a dream, and I had a dream. And then during the day, you close your eyes and you go into like a meditative state and you imagine yourself in the space that the dream took place. And if there was characters in the dream, you're walking around, you're exploring the atmosphere of the dream. And if there's a character in the dream, you go up to him and you ask him questions. And the character is going to answer. And I want to explain it away as, you have a meta summary of what this archetypal character represents. And so your brain calculates what someone like that would say. Kind of like when you say, what would somebody who's super courageous say? Do it in spite of fear. It's like, the probability that they would say something like that is extremely high. So that's probably what's happening when you're doing active imagination. But I've had some really weird experiences doing it because some things that I never would have thought of, and they're just so out of this world, have become like a lot of the things that I think about right now. And it's all from active imagination. And so I started to think, the brain itself does more than we think it does. Who knows the limits of what our brain can do? And maybe this is just like when you are in dialogue with yourself, you have a 3D version of it where you imagine yourself talking to an actual person in your head. And you got to be careful with that because I had to stop doing it because it was hard to know what was real and what wasn't. Like, I'll just be real honest with you. I don't recommend it at all. It was really weird. And Jung himself said that what he was doing was the same thing that psychotic people do. The only difference was he knew what he was doing and they don't. And so I don't recommend going and doing that. But one thing it did do is I think it attached me to my inner self. And what I mean by that is, if there really is such a thing as a spirit guide or a genius, you know, we all have a creative spirit behind us. And you start going, you know, what do I think? What do I believe about this? You don't go to the books around you as much. You start to wonder, like, here's a question that I have. I used to go, I'm gonna go buy the top 10 books to get answers for this, and I'd come to a meta summary, and that would be my conclusion. But instead of doing that, what I've started to do is think about it, really. I mean, just like, I'm not going for advice anymore. I'm kind of just going, you know, what do I think about this? What makes sense to me? Getting out a piece of paper and starting to scribble some stuff down. And, you know, be okay that I'm the one who calculated it. And that causes those limits, those borders that I've created for myself is like, you know what, I'm gonna figure this out myself on purpose, are limits, right? I've given myself the discipline of I'm gonna do the groundwork of calculating this. And it's expressed me in a creative way because I've had to come up with unique answers, right? When you can't just go to the smartest guy in the world and find answers, you have to create your own answers. Well, your own answers are gonna be novel. They're gonna be creative because you created it. It's gonna express your spirit because you had to go to it for the answer. And so in this way, the discipline has been the foundation at which your spirit is expressed, right? And so when you think of the geniuses of the past, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not saying that they're not smart. I don't think that's the key component. There's a lot of smart guys out there that you don't care about because all their stuff is the same as the world. They've conformed. None of their stuff is new. It's the people that use their intelligence to carve their own path and create new things. Those are the ones you care about. Those are the ones that are impressive to you. You're like, what if I could be like that? And the point is that you can be like that, but not, if you were just like them, nobody would care. The point is that you got to carve your own path, right? You got to be creative in your own way. And the only way you're going to do that is if you sit down with yourself and figure out who you are. You have a genius inside of you. You have a uniqueness inside of you. And your uniqueness is unique because it's unique to you. So there needs to be a balance between confidence, which is trust in yourself and in God. That's why we confide in things. And humility, which is knowing that there's always more prep to be done. Confidence is that eternal spirit-filled fire that moves you forward because it gives you the fuel to stand on a limb knowing it might fall. And humility is the constant understanding that you could get better at what you're doing. And so when we think of creativity and productivity, you could think of productivity as marketing yourself in a at scale, faster, more efficient, more effective, more. And you could think of creativity as novel, new, spirit-filled, uniqueness. It's tapping into yourself. What do you think? You know, what do you want to express? Who are you? You know, it's a lot more who-based, not what-based. And so yeah, I think it's interesting. I don't understand it fully yet. Like I said, these are some raw thoughts, but I'm gonna keep talking about it. I'm gonna keep consulting with myself before I go to the outer world and see what I think. And I'm gonna keep posting these videos, and we'll see where it goes from there.